Does size matter in firewood? Let's talk about it. Hello again, friends. Welcome to another edition of Beavertown Outdoors. I'm John. I'm out here at the beautiful Beavertown compound, and I'm out here at the boiler, and figured I'd take this opportunity to discuss something that is a debated topic amongst firewood, especially particularly the outdoor boiler, outdoor wood burner, outdoor water furnace user community. So the question is posed, what's the best size of wood or best wood to burn in your outside boiler? Some people burn small stuff, some people burn somewhere in between. There are people that will throw as big a piece will fit through the door. And I guess it depends on your boiler. So what I mean by that is if you're using, there's a difference on what's going to be best for a gas fire versus a conventional, whether it be a straight conventional multi-pass like the Portage and Main here. It's just going to depend on what kind of boiler you're using. So I know for in the past, when we had the Classic Edge 550 from Central Boiler, that's a gas fire unit, that particular unit worked best with smaller split wood, and it had to be dry. Which I'm going to jump ahead to the conclusion on this, is that no matter what size you decide to run in your boiler, the best stuff to burn is dry. That's the biggest thing. Whether it's a 20-inch round or it's a 2-inch pizza oven size piece of wood, the best thing that it can be is dry. The size of it, that plays into other factors. If you're, again, for a gas fire, you want to get as hot a fire as possible to get that gasification effect, get that reburn going. Those very much need as hot a fire as possible. They want to burn very quickly. They want to burn very thoroughly. And for those, pretty much the size stuff you want to have is stuff like this. Okay, this size. Basically the same size stuff you would run in an indoor stove, in a fireplace. That's the kind of stuff you want to get. Now you can run them longer based on the size of the firebox, but diameter wise, you wanted a hand-sized piece. And that, that's what we had a lot of stockpiled. One, from the wood business, but two, because we had the gas fire. All the wood that I had left over from last year was stuff this size, maybe a little bigger. But when you get into something like the Portage and Main or in a conventional, that the downfall of burning that stuff while it's dry, it burns good, burns hot, burns up quicker. Okay, you know, and what moisture is in there, it's going to give that off really quickly, and then it's going to break down. It's going to burn up a little bit quicker. For something like a conventional boiler, you're talking something more along the lines of this. Now, this isn't a massive piece. This is actually, even to some people, would be a small piece for in here. But, you know, the smaller pieces, when you stack them all up, while if you put the same amount of wood into a boiler, you know, whether by weight, by the sheer volume of the wood, yes, the smaller split stuff stacked up is the same volume of wood as, you know, wood for wood. Not taking into account any of the airspace, it's wood's wood, right? Dry wood is going to burn. It's going to give so many BTUs per pound. If you put the same poundage in there, you've got the same amount of wood. The difference is in surface area. So if you stack a bunch of these up together, you know, you got a bigger piece of wood. You got the volume in here, and especially with the smaller pieces, you can pack them in much tighter, fairly tight. But no matter how tight you pack them in here, if you look here, there's a gap. Okay, you got space for air, and that's where we get into surface area. You're actually, what the surface area that's exposed is going to burn quicker than the center of a bigger piece. So when you stack a bunch of these in there, yes, you're getting the same amount of wood in there, and theoretically you would get the same amount of BTUs. The thing is going to change because of the amount of surface area. The difference in the surface area of 4 of these versus 1 of these is going to be that much more surface area. It's going to be that quicker that it's going to burn. It's going to burn hotter when it does, and for a shorter period of time, it's going to burn great. But it's going to burn through it quicker. You're going to burn it up quicker. It's going to burn hotter. It's going to break down quicker. Versus the bigger piece, which this piece is dry. It's not very cracked because, you know, it's cold. It's winter. Things shrink. We'll leave that alone. But so the bigger pieces in here, it's going to take longer for the heat of that fire to reach the center and get all this this heated up to the point to where it off gases. Because a little more fire science, it's not the solid component of this that actually burns. It's the vapors it gives off once it reaches a temperature where it off gases. So this is going to reach that temperature throughout quicker than this piece because of the more surface area. The more surface area, the more heat it's exposed to in the surrounding fire, the quicker it's going to off gas, the quicker it's going to burn. Versus this, you've only got its 4 sides, and they're going to burn, and it's going to burn slower. It's going to take longer for the heat to get all the way to the center and get this to where the entire thing is off gassing. So that brings us to another topic then, back to the dryness. So you might ask yourself, well, John, if that's the case, then if I want it to burn for a long time, but still give off the BTUs and give off the heat in a controlled manner, then why don't I just leave it whole, like these over here, these ash pieces here? Well, that comes back to the other topic. What I said at the beginning was, no matter what size wood you want to burn, whether you're in a fireplace or in a stove or in a boiler, you want to burn dry wood. You want to burn wood that's as dry as reasonably possible. So many people leave a piece of wood whole, like this piece right here. I'm gonna bring you in here so you can see. So you got this piece of ash. Now ash, When it comes to drying wood, ash, for the most part, if you cut it, especially if you cut it in the fall or the winter, it's dry. It's dry enough to burn now, especially in a boiler. You can cut it. You cut down ash in the winter, you can pretty much cut it down and throw it in the boiler. It's going to burn just fine. But if you have something like oak or maple or most of your woods, they've got a season. They got to dry. Wood dries, I think, somewhere between 1 and 2 inches per year, depending on the species. And that's based on a piece of wood out in the open air, with air all the way around it, or at least every area every side that air can touch, which that's about that surface area thing again, right? So 2 things dry wood, temperature and airflow. Now in the winter time, air's definitely not warm, especially here in Michigan, but the air is typically drier, so you don't need as much warmth to dry the wood as you do the air. There's not as, again, Michigan, we don't see much of the sun in the wintertime. It's always behind clouds, kind of like it is today, but you're always going to get some drying. But definitely during the summer, or if you're in a more arid climate, where you got sun and wind and high heat all day, very dry air, wood dries very quickly. But again, it's about that surface area. Now, many species of wood, there's a thing out there that says, well, wood is all a bunch of straws that air is just going to, as long as it's got air coming here at the face of it, it's going to blow through it like a straw. Not all species are like that. That's one thing, if I can impart on you, is that generalizations made about wood are just that, generalizations, and there's nuances. There's nuances based on the species. For example, just take oak, red oak versus white oak. And I don't know who it was. I seen a video once. Somebody said, one way you can tell white oak from red oak, if they're both dry and gray, is to actually try to blow through a small piece of it. You can actually move air through it, because white oak has a different grain structure that allows air to pass through it. It's a lot like those straws, but where red oak, not so much. You get a piece of maple. Maple has very tight grain, and it's, like, if you ever bust a piece of maple open, you notice it's not stringy at all, right? Your stringy woods, ash, white oak, elm, those are going to move air through them, like that saying goes. But you get maple, if you ever bust a piece of maple open, you notice you don't see, other than the coloration, you don't see the grain. It's not stringy at all. That grain is very tight. It doesn't move a lot of air through it. So I say all that to, again, go back to the point of surface area. Surface area is very important. And for drying wood, you need air and sun and everything else to get on as many sides as possible, as much surface area as possible for it to dry. When we talk about, even if you use 1 inch per year, which generally I believe that's oak, you got this piece here. I'd say that piece is, this is a 6-8 inch piece of ash here, but imagine it was oak for for the sake of discussion. And to get this dry all the way into the center, now the ends will dry, but to get into the center, you need from around here, you're going to get, that 1 inch. 1 inch is only like about that much, right? So it's going to take you, if you got a 6 inch, 8 inch, you got an 8 inch piece, by the time this is fully dry to the center, you're talking 6-8 years, potentially. Again, that varies with your climate, varies with a lot of things. In general, you're at least looking at a couple years before one perfect, complete round is dry. Because there's 2 things working against you. 1, the sheer size of it, but 2 is the bark. So, everybody knows what bark is. Bark is the tree's skin. That bark is going to hold in moisture. It's meant to protect the wood from drying out and dying. Well, when it's cut down, it's still, wherever there's bark, that's going to protect that wood that's underneath and keep that from drying out as quick as you'd like. So splitting wood does a couple things. One, it gets it to a size where you've got enough time to wait and let this dry down to, say, ideally you want 20% or less moisture to burn. You've got the smaller you make it, the less time it takes to get to that through to the middle. The other thing that splitting it does is it breaks this seal. So if you can imagine, if you ever, when you were a kid, if you had Play-Doh, you had a log of Play-Doh and you'd wrap it in plastic, if you only wrapped around the outer side, you'd get the ends would dry up, but you'd still have the center. It'd still be good. Oh, I forgot to cover the ends. Well, I can still use it, still play with the middle. I just cut the dry part off. Okay, so wood will dry just like that, where the end will dry out. See, like even here, you see it starting to crack, but towards the middle, it's protected by the bark. It's not going to dry. So besides getting it opened up to the air, the wood underneath, again, we talked about the size. So if you take this piece, and we even just split this in half. Okay, I'm going to just draw this here. We split this in half. Now, you take these two halves, and instead of having to work all the way in here 1 inch per year, now you just took it from taking potentially 6 years down to, well, 3 years, because now, depending on how you have this positioned, and as long as it's off the ground and everything, you're now working in here 1 inch, and it takes half the time to get this all the way dried out. I mean, you still got to work in this way, but you're working in. Now you take that same piece again, so to get to where this is dry, right? But now you take the same piece again, and now we bust this into quarters. Now you've got even more surface area, so now you're just trying to get these areas down, and you went from a piece that is 8" in diameter. When you cut it in half, now you went to 4 inches, so now you're talking 4 years to get fully dry. But now you cut this again, and now you got even more surface, more surface area, less mass to get dry. Now you're talking a 2-inch piece. You're talking 2 years or less, you're dry. Again, these are very conservative numbers. I mean, you bust something like that in this piece that's 2 inches or so, you're probably likely going to be within a year, you're going to be dry. So, that's where we get to the 1 to 2 inches per year, depending on the species. So 2 year, if it was 2 years per, or 2 inches per year, you got a 2-inch piece, you're fully dry in a year versus 4 years. So that's the reason why you would split it. Now, again, that's kind of this delicate balancing act that you got to get to with an outdoor boiler, especially conventional, where it's not as picky. It'll still burn. It'll burn green wood if you throw it in there, but will it burn efficiently? If you burn in green wood, you're burning water. There's a reason firemen use water to put fire out. Water doesn't burn. Water absorbs heat and takes the heat away from the fire. In a previous video, I talked about that. Water takes the heat away from the fire, doesn't actually burn. So you want to get this dried out so that it'll burn good. The smaller you split this, the quicker it's going to get to that. But the more surface area you get, the smaller the piece, the quicker it is going to burn. The quicker it is going to vaporize and give off gases that are going to burn. So it's going to burn quicker. So with the boiler, what I like to do with the conventional, I'm getting back into the swing of using the conventional, and what I've been splitting now for using for the conventional, I've been actually just taking pieces that are this size, just bust them in half. Just one split, enough to break that seal all the way around it, you'd call it, of the bark, and get this drying out quicker. It's not as critical to get below 20% with the boiler, but I do still want it to be dry. So at least if you just split this in half, it's going to dry exponentially quicker. It's going to dry in half the time. So one split, do that. You're going to have wood, but you're still leaving a good amount of mass that it's going to last, that log's going to last for a lot longer. It's going to take longer for this to heat up to get to the point of vaporization, to the point of it that it's going to burn up. So that's what we, why you should still split wood, in my opinion. Now, if you have a plethora of wood and you don't care about how long it sits there, you've got 2, 3, 4 years for these logs to sit here if they were oak, and they'll get to dry, then by all means, go forth and conquer. Keep them big like that. That's great. Me, I don't have that luxury, so I need these to dry, so I split them at least in half. Been splitting bigger pieces, but I'm still splitting. One of the things that no matter what size you want to burn, the best thing you can invest in is one of these. It's a moisture meter. Now you can get these fairly cheap. These aren't high dollar instruments. You can get some really high dollar ones. You don't need one for firewood. You don't need $100 or $200 or anything like that. I think this cost, a couple years ago, this cost less than $30 on Amazon. But it's nice because it actually gives you a table in the back. There's a couple settings, and this one's fairly accurate to where you can, my feeling, it seems to be very accurate, but to where it's actually got fine tuning settings for based on the species. That's really cool versus just a general moisture meter, but even a general one's going to give you at least an idea. But the nice thing is you have this, and you can actually get a number that it's going to tell you, and I'm just going to stick this in the end here, okay? But you stick it in the wood, and it tells you what the moisture is in it. And again, the target we're looking for is, we want to get under that 20%. We want to get 20% or under. That's ideal. So use that. Now, if you're when you do measure your wood's moisture content, you want to split the wood open, even if you're planning on leaving the rounds full. I just stuck that meter in the end of that wood. Now that said 12-13%. Again, this is ash. That's probably not too far off. This wood these could go in the boiler. I'm sure these could go in the boiler hole. They'd be just fine. They burn up. They'd burn just fine. But the end, again, this is wood surface that's been out in the open exposed. That's going to be dry. To get a true measurement of where your wood is as far as dryness, you want to split it open. Whether it's on your splitter, grab an axe, whatever, split the piece open and measure the freshly split area. That's going to give you a more true measurement of, is that wood dry and ready to burn? It's the same thing I do with all the wood out back, that before I sell it, I split the piece open. The pieces I'm going to sell, I find a bigger piece and split that, and then measure the newly split piece. That way you know what it actually is inside, because that's how you end up with wood that it'll start on fire, but boy, it sizzles and you start seeing all that water boiling out on the ends. That's because the outside's dry enough to burn, but now you've got that center that's wet and it's absorbing that heat, and it's wasted energy because you're actually using the energy of the wood to boil the water out of itself. So anyway, I hope that gives you an idea of, again, the size question, this all goes to your personal preference. Personal preference mixed with the amount of time, the type of wood you have available. If you have nothing but ash available right now, cut it, throw it in, run it whole. But if you're burning, you're buying truckloads of oak, or you're buying, you're getting maple, things like that need to season a little bit, you really should split them at least open once. That's my opinion, but you do what you gotta do. Unless, like I said, if you got years for it to sit, as long as you get it off the ground, either stacked up nice, or at least off the ground on pallets somehow, that wood will dry out. Go for it if you got the time. If you got the time to leave it that way. If you're finding that you're going through a lot of wood, you're buying a truckload of wood, green, brand new wood, you're cutting it and throwing it right in the boiler, and I went through that whole truckload of 20 cord and and I'm not even through the season. There's a reason why. You're wasting wood. So that's, you got to get ahead, especially if you want to burn complete full rounds. So anyway, I think I beat that to death. So that's going to do it for me today, guys. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Feel free to share. But until next time, everyone, from all of us here at Beavertown Outdoors and the beautiful Beavertown compound, take care of each other, be good, stay safe, and I'm out.